I'm Matt, and this is Bigfoot Crossroads.
I'm not a Bigfoot hunter. I was never a Bigfoot hunter. I didn't really even think very much of it, to be perfectly honest. And I do a lot of overlanding. You saw the videos on my channel. I spend probably about 8 months out of the year in the wilderness, either in the mountains, the desert, the forest, etc. And I had started doing this about 12 years ago. And 12 years ago, I had a square body Jeep, and I was always taking off, and my girlfriend was getting kind of aggravated that I didn't take her with me, but her work schedule didn't allow, so it is what it is. One night we got a long weekend, and I said, hey, how about this? Why don't we just jump in the Jeep, bring the dog with us, and we'll head up north. We'll head up to Vermont. It's about an hour and a half drive from where I live. No big deal. We headed out of here later than I would have liked because my ex was always late. So we headed out of here around 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and headed up to Vermont. I had done a little bit of research on places to camp up there, someplace on a mountain. I wasn't a huge Vermont guy at all, so I wasn't really familiar with the area. So I did a little bit of research. I found a campground. Seemed like it was okay. And we headed out. And it's a long, long drive. You got to drive from Massachusetts to New Hampshire to Vermont. We make it to Vermont. It's already nice and dark. And I'm not exactly positive of where I'm going. But I have a good idea. So what we're doing is basically just driving up. We're driving up and up. We're getting higher in elevation, and we're on this road that is allegedly bringing us into a national park, but I've never been there, and I'm not positive because it's dark out and there's no lights. It was kind of a trip, no pun intended.
Yeah.
But we get up there, and off the highway, off the main road, onto this road, we were probably driving for 20 miles, straight up. And then we finally found the campground, and it was unattended. There was nobody around, nothing like that. I grew up in Lynn, Massachusetts, which is a fairly tough town. So you have to have really good situational awareness. And I also learned that in the military, and et cetera, so forth. We get there, and the first thing that I noticed is this is camping season, and yet there's nobody at this, the parking lot for the campground. You park your car, you throw your gear, in a backpack or something, and you hike in a little bit, not really far, but you can't see your vehicle. I noticed that the parking lot was overgrown with weeds, and there was broken glass from automobiles on the ground. And I'm thinking, dude, this is Vermont, man. Don't worry about this. No one's going to hit the Jeep while you're gone. You're good to go. Don't worry about it. So I lug everything in, and we had gotten a report of rain coming for that night, and I'm incredibly survival conscious, etc. So I set up a tarp, I set up the tent, I dig a trench around it so it will direct the water away if any water falls in the middle of the night, and I also put a tarp up. So my ex had absolutely zero camping chops. She just didn't know what to do, so I did it all, and it took about an hour and a half. So we got there, and it was dark. By the time I had the tent and everything set up, it was darker, and now I got to start a fire. So I go around and I scavenge up a bunch of wood because I'm not positive if this is a national forest, and I know you don't cut wood down. It's a no-no.
Right.
So I run around, I scavenge up a bunch of wood, and I get a roaring fire going. So it's myself, my ex, who is armed at the time. She's got her sidearm with her, and we have an 80-pound pit bull terrier with us. And I've done this a million times. It's no big deal. we set up the campground, we get the fire going, and we're standing there, and I've got this picture in my mind. I've tried to describe it in videos, and I think I fail at it. We're standing there, and I got this most. I mean, it's a nice night. The sky's fairly clear. The rain hasn't come yet. It's a nice setup. Nobody's around. You got the fire going. We're protected. We got the dog. Everything's good. We're standing there, and I had the most overwhelming feeling of dread ever come over me. And I didn't say a word, but I looked at her, and she's looking at me, and apparently she can tell that something's wrong, or she's feeling it as well. I can't guarantee she felt the same thing, but she said she did. The dog runs back to the Jeep. That's never happened in a million years. I've never, the dog was like, I am out of here. And then I heard this noise. This is the part I have a hard time describing. It sounded like somebody from the old days, back in the 50s, a housewife worried about her children, wringing her hands like with a dish rag, if that makes any sense. That's the only thing I can think of to describe it.
Yeah, kind of the squeaking of the cloth, kind of as she clenches it.
Type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Except the cloth was a cord of firewood, and whoever was wringing it was huge. You could hear. I know what an elk sounds like. I know what a mountain lion sounds like when it's sneaking up on you in Colorado. I know what bears, moose, because we've got tons of them right up north. I know what all these animals sound like. I had never heard this before, and you couple that with the dog bailing on us, and both of us all of a sudden getting this unbelievable, overwhelming feeling of dread. I pulled down the tent, I wrapped everything up like I wasn't even there, threw it in the vehicle, and we were out of there. Now we got nowhere to go, and it's almost 11 o'clock at night. And the bonus to all that is, I don't know where I am. So it's even better. Now we're driving around in the dark on a mountain where something just freaked us and the dog out.
So high emotion, you're in an unfamiliar area, and from what I understand about you, I mean, obviously I don't know you personally or anything, but I'm guessing this isn't something you would typically do. You wouldn't typically pull down camp like that and haul ass.
Not in a million years. Not in a million years. And it's only happened to me twice. The other time was I got chased off by a mountain lion that would not go away. He was a problem in the whole town up in Colorado. So it wasn't just me. Mm-hmm. But this time, this was me, somebody else, and an animal. And the animal was the first. I don't know if she was the first to respond. It might have hit her at the same time it hit me. But I mean, it was like humidity. It just came all over me, and it was fright. I don't even know how to describe it. Impending feeling of doom, something bad. And then we heard something crushing sticks or logs, large ones, like just crushing them like a wood chipper without the wood chipper noise. Yeah. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So we get in the car, we bail, we're driving for a while, and I don't know where we are, but we're going down. I know on the way in, we drove for 20 miles going up, so going down is at least going to get us away from this. Plus, now it's late. We're kind of freaked out because this has never happened. I don't know how to explain myself to her, and we need a place to sleep for the night. So we're driving along, and then all of a sudden, I just happened to look up through the windshield, and I pulled over the Jeep, and she saw it as well. And I don't know why we don't have video or anything, because it was only 12 years ago, but we didn't. I don't know how. Now I get why people say, I didn't even think to take a picture. I didn't even think to take a picture.
Yeah, it doesn't even cross your mind at the time whenever all this is happening.
I guess not. And that's why I keep GoPros on my helmet now. So I've always got one on me. So I get out of the Jeep. She gets out of the Jeep. And I looked up. In Boston, we have a place called the New England Museum of Science. And they've got an astronomy area where you go in a room that's got a dome over it.
Yeah.
They've got this massive, massive contraption that's about the size of a refrigerator that spins around and creates a solar system in the building, except it's perfect. You know, there's no clouds. It's perfect.
Yeah.
We got out of the truck and looked up at the sky. I've been watching the sky. I'm 55 years old. I've been watching the sky since I was 9. I take a lot of astrophotography pictures. They're on my YouTube channel that you might have seen or whatever. I have never seen a sky like this before or since. It was just literally otherworldly. It was just so bright and vivid. It didn't look real. Are the two things connected? I have no idea. But I mean, two crazy things that have never happened before happened within 30 minutes of each other. So we look at it, and it seemed to have a calming effect because we weren't quite, it wasn't the sense of urgency, like we got to get out of here, even though we don't know where we're going. It kind of melted away a little bit. And as we're driving, we start to get into like the small, it's a town called Leicester, Vermont. And I'll tell you in a minute. Small town, New England. We finally get into some houses start popping up on the left and right every now and again. You know, now we're coming down the mountain. We're in the foothills. There's some residences around. And my girlfriend points and says, "Dude, do you see that?" And I'm like, "What's up?" We look over and there's like a massive tree, a perfectly shaped massive tree that's all lit up. Like it's got strictly white Christmas lights all over it. The problem was there was no Christmas lights on it. They weren't globe worms. They weren't fireflies, nothing to that effect. This was a constant, steady light. And she saw it before I did. And I've been called a conspiracy theorist in certain arenas here and there. She isn't. She's a professional that works in Boston. She's been in the same place for 1,000 years. To this day, I have no clue what we were looking at. I drove close to the tree because now I'm starting to freak out because how come ever since about 45 minutes ago, we live in bizarro world now. Everything is just crazy. You know, I think this is absolutely crazy, dude.
And like, obviously you're familiar with eye shine and all that. Like,
absolutely
nothing like you've ever seen before.
No, there was thousands of little lights in this tree. Maybe that might be an exaggeration. I don't want to do that.
Right, but a lot.
It was at least 200, maybe 1,000. It was a lot. It was a trip. I drove the Jeep up close enough because she wanted to see if it was someone had ran extension cords because this was in a field, you know, near houses, but in a field. Nothing like that. We get up to the tree. The lights go out. It's all over. We're apparently just completely crazy now. We get run out of camp. The sky looks like the Boston Museum of Science, and now trees are lighting up. Cool. This is perfect. Now, you know, this is totally normal. This is what we wanted to do. You know?
Yeah. Nice, relaxing evening at the campsite.
Yep, absolutely. So I continue down this road, and we come to a crossroads, which is Main Street in Leicester, Vermont. And right in front of us is a hotel. Perfect. Because now it's like 11:30, pushing 11:45. It's late. You know, she worked the night shift the day before. And I'm just old and I want to go to sleep. Even 12 years ago, I was still old. I go to sleep early. So neither one of us drink or do drugs, just in case anybody's wondering about that. So long story longer, we get to the hotel, check in, blah, blah, all is well. Wake up the next morning and I'm dying for breakfast. There's a diner. I noticed there's all sorts of cool little shops. We didn't see them pulling in the night before because it's a dark town for whatever reason. It's not all lit up at night, you know?
Yeah.
I grabbed breakfast and I said to the woman, and I'm very careful how I ask people. I don't lead them, you know? I don't want to put any ideas in their heads. I said, hi, I placed my order and then I said, do you guys ever have anything strange happen around here? You know, anything weird? She said, what, like Bigfoot? And I went, Uh, maybe I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I walked out of there going, "Holy cow!" Like she didn't. The first thing out of her mouth, like it was no big deal, and then she said it. And one of the customers was like, "Oh yeah, we get it all the time around here."
Wow.
So that's great. That's good to know. Good to know. I grabbed my order. I head back out to the Jeep because she's watching the dog. And I said, here's the breakfast. And I said, "You're not going to believe this." And she said, "Yeah, whatever you're going to say, you're not going to believe this." I said, "What's up?" She pointed right across the street. And there's your listeners can look this up, Leicester, Vermont. They call it a gorilla statue. There's a, I don't know, 25-foot tall statue of Bigfoot in the middle of this town holding a Volkswagen VW Beetle over his head. It's still there to this day. They call it a gorilla, but it isn't. It's in the entire town. There was Bigfoot tracks on the fences, Bigfoot signs. Bigfoot lives here. Bigfoot crossed absolutely everywhere. And we didn't notice when we rolled in. We had no idea whatsoever at all, But it really made me start to think about maybe that's why that free National Forest camping parking lot and camping area was completely empty.
Yeah.
Overgrown with broken glass. Apparently there's an aggressive something or other here. So that was in a less than 12-hour period, all of this. We eat breakfast and I said, "Hey, let's not ruin this. Why don't we head back up there and I'm going to see if I can find some footprints." I'm not a Bigfoot hunter, researcher, nothing like that at the time whatsoever at all. But now that these people are saying this and they've got a giant statue in the middle of the town, I got to go look.
Yeah, it sounds like something out of King Kong,
Well, it's funny because it does kind of look like King Kong, but you can tell what it is.
Yeah.
We drive all the way back up there, and it was a long ride. I think we went up and elevate. We were in the Green Mountains. And apparently Green Mountains is incredibly active, and I had no clue. It wasn't my thing. If you're not looking into stuff like that, you don't really know about it.
Right.
Until you do,
Yeah.
After 11 years, maybe 11 and a half years, her and I had been apart amicably for years. And we didn't talk regularly at all. She's got a different, I'm always on the road. I'm never actually around. I'm usually in the Rockies or Sierras or wherever. I hit her up and said, "Hey, remember that night in Vermont? What do you remember about it?" And that's all I said. I'm not leading her. I'm not baiting her. Just, what do you remember? And she writes verbatim the story I just told you. And that's exactly what I remember. The chances of both of us remembering everything down to the letter is crazy. But apparently I always wondered how people called into a podcast or they were in a live stream or something like that. And they can remember, and the color of the bark on the tree. And I'm like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was 10 years old. I'm 65 now, but I remember what color the grass was,
Yeah.
We get back up to the campground. It took quite a while. We're in the Green Mountains. We were about 1,000 feet above the town. So we weren't way up in the mountains, but it's still called the Green Mountains. So it is what it is. I find my way back to the campground. The dog will not get out of the car today. That makes no sense because since we checked out of the hotel, she sat in the car while I ordered breakfast, while we ate breakfast, etc. She hasn't been out of the car yet. We're surrounded by trees and the dog doesn't want to get out of the car. That's never happened before. All right, cool. I don't know what wood knocks are. I don't know what vocalizations are. I don't smell anything crazy. But I know that if this was a Bigfoot, I bet you it's going to leave big footprints. That's what I'm thinking.
Stands to reason.
You know what I mean? It's all in the name. So I go up there and I start poking around. She stays in the Jeep because the dog doesn't want to leave. So, okay, cool. I go up there, but sadly, it was the end of spring, almost summertime, and the foliage up there was intense. It's very, very similar to the Pacific Northwest. You know how you can't find a single footprint up there no matter what because everything is covered with moss.
Right.
Same thing in Vermont, except it's moss and ferns. And right where I believed it was standing, because it wasn't all that far from us. I don't know why I know this. I could be completely wrong. I was married before, but I couldn't find a single print. And I guess that was pretty much the end of that. And it was just an absolute trip. That was that one time in Vermont. And again, I've put videos up on my channel about Bigfoot since. I've actually gone over St. Helens in a helicopter looking, etc. I put a little effort in. At the time, I knew nothing about it, wasn't looking, because I was simply looking for footprints. I should have been looking for, twisted off trees, etc. But apparently it's a very, very hot spot, and there's a lot of caves in that area as well, for whatever that's worth.
It's kind of crazy what you're talking about, because I know in one of your later videos that you recently published, you ran across an interesting area, and you hear people in the Bigfoot world all the time talk about limb formations, and one that comes up time and time again are tree twists, where it looks like something has just like taken a tree and twisted it until it snapped, and you can actually sometimes even see the fibers of the tree itself twisted on itself. And that sound that you're describing, I'm wondering if that's what you heard, something twisting a tree.
It's crazy. After all this time, after all this research, I never thought of that. But what you just said makes perfect sense. It sounded like somebody wringing their hands or twisting a tree. Yeah. I just didn't know to look for it. I was looking for the footprints. So that's brilliant, man. I never thought of that. That's exactly what I was trying to describe. Something was twisting big wood. You could tell.
The other stuff, though, the tree and the way the sky looked, I don't have an explanation for that, but it's just, it can't just be coincidence that it happened right then in the same location as that event. And one person could see something and think that's kind of crazy, but both of you saw it. And why would the sky stand out to you if there wasn't something kind of weird about it?
I'm not one of those people that thinks Bigfoot gets dropped off by UFOs and so forth. I also don't believe it's an undiscovered monkey. I think Bigfoot's it's been around a long, long time. They know what it is. We're the only country in the world that has an ape, but we deny it. Yeah. Every other country, yeah, we got apes. No, nothing to see here, folks. Keep it moving.
Yeah.
And yet more and more people, ever since the pandemic occurred, more and more people do what I do, which means they go to places where no one else is around, and with cameras, and they do run into stuff like this. It's getting pretty crazy. But I ran into this guy. I'm driving a 97 Land Cruiser on 37-inch tires, 6-inch lift. It's supercharged, and it's loaded down. It's my house, basically, with all my gear, my drones, my computers, all my gear. And I'm driving through the Rockies at night. If you know anything about Land Cruisers, you can't kill them because you can't go over 50 miles an hour, and you cannot climb a mountain, even with a supercharger. I'm driving westbound going to Ouray, Colorado. When I say Vermont sky was lit up, I've been to Death Valley numerous times, simply and only for astrophotography, shots of the Milky Way. I've been to the Colorado Rockies. I've been to the darkest places in Texas. Where, you go so south, you run into the cartels, etc. Seriously, which is lame, but it is what it is. I've seen pristine dark skies, and none of them, this sky made me go, what the F, and pull over. And then she said the same thing. I have never seen one like this since or before. And she saw it as well. You know, and I don't know why we didn't take a picture. It was a weird night, as you just heard. It was a very strange night, but is there a correlation between the skies lighting up and us getting run out of camp? Let's not forget about the tree that was lit up and then it wasn't, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, I've literally filmed with high definition cameras, like, you know, Netflix cinema quality cameras, when fireflies mate in Virginia, because as far as the eye can see, entire fields are just lit up. It's almost supernatural, but it's not. It's just bugs. So, I mean, I've seen stuff like that. I've seen the skies. We get run out of camp, and then we see a sky that I've never seen to this day. And then we see a tree lit up, and then it goes out, and it's not even on anyone's property. Like, it made no sense. It made no sense. And the town has a giant statue of a Bigfoot holding the car over its head in the middle of the town, you know? So that kind of thing.
I mean, it sounds just so bizarre. And like, I don't know if they're connected. I mean, there's nothing necessarily connecting them other than, you know, time and place. But all of it just sounds so weird, man.
It's an absolute true story that I never really wanted to tell it till about a year ago. That's why I made that video. But then when I listened to your show, I'm like, you know what? I wonder if he'd be interested in this, because you can type in Vermont gorilla statue and you'll see the exact statue of exactly. I wake up, I look out the front of the hotel. After getting breakfast, I walk out of the diner and my girlfriend says, dude, look across the street. And there's a ginormous statue of a Bigfoot holding the car over its head. After the waitress just told me, oh, Bigfoot? Anything strange ever happen around here? Instantly, oh, Bigfoot? I said, maybe. I don't know. So, and I've heard a lot of stories, and I know you've heard millions of stories about people tying, you know, Bigfoot to portals, other dimensions, you know.
Oh, yeah. Anything you can think of, somebody's got a story for it.
Right. I hear you. I've heard them. I've listened to a lot of stories. And that one was, I had never heard one like that before, but I don't understand. It's just a strange thing. In a 20-mile radius, statue of a Bigfoot, tree lit up, sky like I've never seen before, and then we got run out of camp, you know? And the dog bailed. She left and then would not go back. She wouldn't get out of the car. The dog, she's the kind of dog you have to chase around. Please get back in the car. Come on, you know, you want a cookie? Anything. I'll give you $20. Get back in the car. Would not get out.
Just not having it. Whatever was out there that night, she didn't want no part of it.
I mean, I have never been scared to my own detriment. I'm that dude. I'm too stupid. You know, I'm not gonna, I'll shoot you. Oh, I bet you won't. Dang, you know, stuff like that. I got scared off by a noise and a bad feeling. It came down on us like a fog. So, but then at this point, I hadn't seen anything other than the sky anomaly, the statue, stuff like that. Now I'm alone, and this is a couple of years later. I don't remember exactly when. I believe this was about 4 years ago, 2019. I believe it was 4 years ago. I'm heading out to meet a buddy of mine. We're both going to take our Land Cruisers up to Ouray, Colorado. Really awesome four-wheeling up there, et cetera, et cetera. Mountain lions, bears, all sorts of stuff. But I never heard anything about anything else, and I never thought about anything else. I'm coming through the mountains now. I got to go from 5,000 feet to 12,000 feet in my truck that sucks at doing this. So I have to focus here. You got to catch the gas pedal right. You got to get the supercharger to kick in, and you just got to hope for the best. And once you get up this mountain in my truck, as badass as it looked, it was scary to drive. And coming down the mountain was worse because I'm always going, I hope my brakes hold together. I hope I tightened everything up okay. Like, driving through the Rockies is stressful. It was always my least favorite part of crossing the country in that truck. So I built another one, but that's another story. there's a small mining town, an old silver and gold town in the Rockies on 80 West. And up there, you can stop at the store. I believe you can get gasoline there or at the shop next door. But in this store, they rent cabins that are on a ridge up in the Rockies, way up behind their, you can tell these people live there their entire lives. So they've got a general store, and I tried to Google it, see if I could remind myself what the name was. But their entire thing, when you're walking around there, is Bigfoot, Sasquatch. It's everywhere. So there's not a lot of people in the store at that exact moment. And the kid that works there looks like he might be the owner or the owner's brother. He just had that look to him. And I said, hey, let me ask you, on the down low. I said, is all this, this Bigfoot stuff, is this just for tourists, which is cool? Or he said, well, every year they wreck at least 2 of our cabins that are right on the cliff above us, or the ridge. And I'm like, no kidding. It's still to this point. I'm not even thinking about the time I got run off in Vermont at this point. I'm just thinking this is just marketing, good for him. It's all good. It's cool. When you're in the mountains, you run into all sorts of people talking about it, or, stores that sell Bigfoot stuff, etc. It's all good. No big deal. So I'm out of here, and I took a little break, calm my nerves down, because it's hard to explain. Everyone loved my truck. My truck was pretty much world famous, and more people knew it than knew me. And I've been on YouTube for 15 years. I've had other channels. The new one that you watched, I just started that not too long ago. But my nerves have calmed down. I'm driving my truck, which is a 7,000-pound 1990s technology vehicle that I need to get down the mountain and then right back up. As soon as you get down the mountain, you go straight back up, and then you're out of the woods. But I got one more climb to make. I just talked to this guy who just explained to me that Bigfoot, they have a Bigfoot problem, apparently, that every year they show up and they just mess up some cabins. And apparently it is what it is. They deal with it and they move on. And then if you want, you can buy a Bigfoot sticker, signed hat, Bigfoot jerky, the whole 9 yards.
Right.
So it's all good. I'm driving away. It's dark. I'm behind schedule because I try not to drive at night in this particular vehicle because it's a death trap at night. The headlights are horrible. I'm coming down the mountain, and I'm just about at the bottom where I'm going to go down and then straight back up. So I got to punch it and hope the truck catches the correct gear. And I'm not that dude doing 35 up the mountain with my hazards on and everyone beeping at me going, go back to Massachusetts, asshole. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Ask me how I know. I come to the bottom or the saddle. I'm getting ready to go right back up, and a giant black 9 foot tall or more thing steps from behind the Jersey barriers. So he's on the other side. I'm going west. He's on the eastbound side. He steps over the Jersey barriers, the concrete barriers that go between the highways so cars don't hit each other.
Yeah.
Steps out of that or over it, and one, two steps, he goes across 2 lanes back into the woods, and I saw him. And I couldn't, dude, it was so big. It took me weeks to figure out what I just saw, even though I'm driving up the mountain now, looking behind me. So I'm not looking where I'm going at all. And I keep thinking, dude, stop and get pictures of the footprints. There has to be some. But if I stopped, I would have had to roll back down and then start from a dead stop at the bottom. And I would have been doing 29 miles an hour going up with my hazards on. So I elected not to, but I saw it that time. And the size of this thing was, it was massive, dude. It stepped across 2 lanes plus the breakdown lanes. Jersey barrier, 1 foot in the middle, 1 foot, and he's out.
Wow.
And I saw, I mean, it was unbelievable. And I've never told that story. I've never told that story, but I did have the conscience, the presence of mind to want to go back. I was ready. I wanted to take pictures. I knew there would be footprints there. The dude up the hill just told me these things were here. And I'm like, yeah, marketing salesman, you know,
Yeah.
what a lie. He was not kidding whatsoever at all. And it was late and there wasn't any traffic behind me that I could see or in front of me. That was the only thing I had going for me. I didn't have to worry about holding up traffic. And when I came down the hill, I was rolling because I wanted to at least try to pull 50 miles an hour going up, which means I was doing about 89, 90 coming down. So I was rolling. So I know there was no cars on the road. And this thing was absolutely massive, man. Massive. And I couldn't get the shot.
How far ahead of you was it whenever it crossed?
All right. I'm going to say he's crossing right where I'm going to start going up. So he's probably about 40 feet in front of me. The entire time I'm on the phone, I keep getting the same potential spam number over and over and over and over. And that never happens. Just throw that and it never happens back.
So weird, man. So weird. Could you tell like a hair color or anything?
All I could see was complete and total black. Black. It looked like a giant shadow crossing the street.
Yeah.
Because I remember driving away thinking, you ain't tired, you know? I didn't start driving till late. It's not like I've been on the road and I'm having the black dog moment.
Right.
It's never happened before, and it's never happened since. It only happened that one time. And it was unbelievably massive. I think he was probably about, I'd have to say, 30 to 40 feet in front of me. So he was right in front of me.
I mean, I'm just trying to run the calculations in my head real fast. I mean, that's about 20 to 30 feet, I would guess, give or take, covered in a couple steps.
It's 2 lanes. I tried to Google this too, and then we had a storm. I just told you that. We had a storm here. We lost the internet. I was trying to figure out what the width of that exact road is. But, I mean, it's 2 lanes plus breakdowns on either side, and then the Jersey barriers. This dude did it in one step. One step in the middle of the road was all it took.
Wow.
It looked like he was 15 feet tall, but I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say it was the biggest thing I've ever seen moving in my life, ever.
I mean, people commonly talk about, you know, seeing them between 8 and 10 feet tall. That's a pretty average guesstimate on height for a full-grown one. And I remember the first time I ever went on like a real major outing, whenever I met up with a big group of people. It was down in Eastern Texas. And one of the things that we did while we were there is we went out on this tree and we took a tape measure and we marked exactly where 10 foot was on the tree. And of course, you know, regulation basketball hoops, 10 feet. We've all seen those and everything. But whenever you're standing at the base of a tree looking up at how tall 10 feet is, it's insane. It's insanely high.
I totally agree. You mentioned that you saw that video. I was taking my truck for a test drive because I've been working on it for 4 months, doing everything, the engine, suspension, everything. So I have to, when I think I'm done, I take it for a test run up to New Hampshire and back because I can take it off road. I can take it on the highway for 100 miles. If anything's going to fall apart, happen while I'm still close to home. I took my truck for a test drive the other day, and I took this road that one of the locals told me about. And he said, you know, I said, I'm looking for a dirt road. He said, sure. Take a left right where you are, go down the street about a mile, take a right. There's a dirt road. And then he looked at me, he looked at my truck, and he said, but if you want some real terrain where nobody goes, go straight. And I'm like, hell yeah, that's what I'm doing. And now, this was just the other day. Now that I've been researching this and I've added a couple of pieces of equipment to my my repertoire, I am trying to find something cool, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm only doing a test drive. I'm you know, that's beside the point.
This isn't a Bigfoot outing. This is just you testing. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm not, I got to go make sure the truck's good. And then we can go, you know, 6-7 months. Who cares? We look for Bigfoot all we want. I drive up this dirt road, and it's a pretty gnarly road. I mean, it was more than I was expecting, but he kind of gave me like a sly grin, like, you want some real terrain, not too many people go to. He was not lying, because there was one set of prints, and they were from a dirt bike. Otherwise, this was a really steep incline. It was near a water reservoir for the town. I don't know what town it was. I was near Lake Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire. I take the truck up there. Cool. Everything's great. I'm taking a few GoPro videos of the truck coming up the terrain, blah, blah, blah. And I stop. And the first thing I notice is the flies are unbelievable. We got black flies and mayflies in New England, like you read about this time of the year. At any rate, I happen to look right through the flies because it's a cloud of them. And I'm like, wow, that is a really strange tree structure. And then I start looking around, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do a wood knock just for fun. And of course, I grab a piece of wood. I've never done a wood knock in my life. I take it and hit it against a tree, and it just turns to powder because it's all moldy. I got that on camera. It was kind of funny, but
yeah.
Okay. So I put the camera down, and I do a wood knock. And within 20 seconds, I don't know if it was a grunt or a growl, but it wasn't anything I was expecting to hear. And it was relatively quick. It was within 20 seconds. But the thing is it didn't give me this overwhelming sense of dread that I've heard so much about when they're in the area. Mm-hmm. Like I believe I experienced before. It was no big deal. So that was fun. You know, I hit a tree, and I don't know, something growled. Now I'm looking at my truck, and I'm looking past my truck, and I'm like, that looks exactly like a tree structure I've seen in so many videos. So I start walking over there, and I'm like, wait a minute. There's a tree bent over and pinned to the ground with another tree. And this is a big tree. I mean, in the video, it doesn't look huge, but if you research this, you know that a 7-inch diameter tree, me and you ain't bending that thing.
No, not at all.
And it was 30 feet tall. It was bent over in an arch and pinned to the ground. And then if you look at it and turn to the right, now remember, what attracted my attention was a tree structure that I've already forgot about, because now I'm seeing this stuff. There's a tree arch pinned to the ground. And then if you look to the right, there's a tree snapped and twisted off at about 10.5 feet off the ground. And then if you look to the left of the bowed tree, there's a good 35, 40-foot long tree, 8 inches in diameter or more at the base, that's lodged in a tree upside down, and there's no roots on it. Now, I've already got a flood of comments on the video. Well, it's snow. It's like, yeah, dude, remember what I do? I spend all my time in the desert, the forest, or the mountains. I'm familiar with snowfall and the effects it has on trees, especially in Colorado, etc.
Right.
I wouldn't make a video out of this if this was not unbelievably strange. There's no way a tree is going to fall and land upside down. Did you see the one I was talking about in the video?
Yeah. Well, it really interested me because I've actually, years ago, took photos of the same thing here in Oklahoma. Tree upside down, wrong end, 30 feet up, lodged between the fork of another tree. And at that location, it wasn't nearly as thick as where you were. And I looked around, and there wasn't even a place for that tree to have come from. You know, it was like something carried it in there and shoved it up there like that.
This tree didn't come from anywhere. There was no broken stump on the ground that would match up with it. And it doesn't matter. If a tree snaps off at the base, it doesn't flip itself upside down in the air and lodge itself in a tree.
Right.
And I've got these 3 strange anomalies all right next to each other. And I do think there was a print on the ground, but I couldn't tell because there was a piece of wood that fell over it. But it looked just like what I've seen, but I don't know. The strangest thing about this was I stopped right next to this, not even realizing it until I did realize it. And it's just a very, very strange little side note that occurred.
Right.
I was trying to go to a location that I've also done a video. It's called my bug out location. It isn't really now because I put a video out, so now everyone knows where it is. But it's a good place to take the truck to test drive, and I know where it is. Except the day that I ended up with the bent tree and the upside down tree, I tried to get around traffic and I ended up getting lost. But fortunately, I got lost and found that, which I thought was very, very cool. But I went today, test drove the truck again today, and I went to my quote-unquote bug-out location. Now, last year, year before, 2021, in New Hampshire, I don't know anything. I'm not a Bigfoot guy. I'm there. I'm setting up fires. I'm taking videos of water snakes at night, porcupine, stuff like that. I love outdoors. I love wildlife. And I'm from the city, so it makes no sense. But it is what it is. I'm sleeping in my truck. And this has happened to me 3 times up there, and I never once figured it out until now. I've never thought about Bigfoot. I've never had a bad feeling up there, and I camp up there completely and utterly alone. And I am out in the middle of the White Mountains. When you wake up at my little camping spot, you're literally 5 feet from the water. And it's an enormous lake surrounded by mountains, and it's fairly remote. And the worst thing up there is you'll get woken up at 3 a.m. because a beaver will be sitting in the water chewing on a log so loud it wakes you up. That's crazy, but it's happened. But it takes a lot to wake me up. So he must have been there a while. But more than once, 3 times total, I never thought to look for footprints, sign, or anything else. Something has slapped, like bang, at least once, probably more than once, because I woke up and heard it, didn't know what was going on, slapping the side of my tent. My tent is 7.5 feet off the ground. It's on top of my truck, and my truck's really tall, and my tent's made of aluminum. It springs open like a clamshell.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that was a thing, that they like to hit campers and such in the middle of the night. So I am going to bring some FLIR equipment. I've got FLIR thermal binoculars, and I've got regular military night vision. It's Gen 4. It's good stuff. So hopefully I can get some footage of these things. I'm going to try, but it's weird that I've had this stuff happening around me when I wasn't even looking for it. Now that I'm going to look for it, I'm probably not going to be able to find it because you know how that goes.
I mean, what do you think about that, though? The fact that you have just kind of stumbled into these situations like that.
You'd have to know me to understand this, but everybody that knows me, it's a weird thing. I'll say the most random thing from the 70s that most people wouldn't know about. I'll bump into my buddy, and the first thing out of his mouth will be that. So me rolling up, test driving my truck, and then just simply turning my head and going, hey, that looks like a tree structure. And then I find an upside down tree. That snapped off tree I couldn't even reach how high that was snapped off.
Yeah, yeah.
My old channel back in the day, before anyone knew who he was, I had Ron Moorhead on, and he was so cool. He let me interview him. This was 14 years ago.
Yeah.
He messed up the audio and everything, but he was just so cool, man. I know you know this, but he said that he believes that there's 24-foot tall alpha males creeping around the highest mountains in the country. What do you make of that?
And that's crazy. I don't know.
24-foot tall.
Yeah.
Dude.
So I'll tell you this. So there's this guy, and I can't give away much information about him because, I don't have his permission to talk about this, but
no worries.
He's a guy who I would trust, knows what he's talking about. And I've always known him to be a really solid guy, salt of the earth, not going to bullshit you one bit. One time we were talking, and he lives down in southeastern Oklahoma, Winding Stair Mountain area. It's the Ouachita Mountains. They go over into Arkansas and everything. one of two mountain ranges in Oklahoma. We don't have a lot of mountains, and they're not really big ones. Most people from out where you're at would call them hills. But he told me matter of factly that I asked him, I said, have you ever seen like a real big one? And according to him, he watched one cross this road up by his house, and it stepped out of the tree line and over the road and down into the tree line on the other side. And this is on the side of a mountain. And that there was like an electric pole down there. And he said this thing's head was just below the top of the electric pole. And the electric pole was like, I think he said 25 feet tall or something like that. And I was just like, come on, man. Like, how does something that big hide? How does it walk between the trees? You know, I mean, that's just crazy.
It is crazy, but like I said, I've got Ron Moorhead telling me these things. There's a lot. I mean, this guy, the way he recorded and got everything is astonishing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he did here and there in his story, he's got anomalous UFO-ish type things that happen once in a while, but usually not, you know, but it makes me think that sometimes, I don't know. I don't know, man. Bigfoot has some sort of control or so, I don't know. I don't know.
Hey, man, I've been doing this for over 20 years now, and I'm nowhere closer to figuring it out than I was on day one. And I started out as a guy that was just, you know, flesh and blood. This is just an undiscovered primate. That's all. And then, you know, it keeps on moving more and more into those gray areas. And at this point, I don't even know what to think, man. I don't know what's real and what's not, what these things are, what they can and can't do. I couldn't tell you.
You've got PhDs now putting their name on places like Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of Bigfoot activity. If you listen to the audio, I'm huge with audio books. I just listened to the guy, I forget his name, but he's a PhD. And he was at Skinwalker when he was there with Bigelow. Mm-hmm. And they've seen him come out of what appears to be a portal. They saw it through these are all PhDs saying, dude, there's a portal and there's a Bigfoot crawling out of it. You know, and then they see him here and there. These are PhDs. That didn't used to happen. You know, there's something to all this. So it's crazy, man. But your buddy saying, the guy you know saying he saw one as tall as the pole, the one that crossed the highway was the tallest thing I ever saw. I'm saying 9 feet because that's a ridiculous height. And I think it was way bigger than that. It stepped across the highway. It stepped in the middle once. That was it. I mean, that's insane, man.
Yeah.
That's insane. Got to be 20 feet. I mean, a 10-foot gate or whatever it's, you know, like step to step. That's insane.
Yeah.
But I mean, I saw it. I've never seen it before. I've never seen it since. And it's just a strange coincidence. I'm talking to a guy 15 minutes earlier at the top of a mountain. I'm at the bottom of a mountain and there goes one, you know?
Yeah.
I think they're a lot more common. And the more time you spend outdoors, when you're outdoors for a week or two, which I do quite often, if somebody new is around, you can smell them. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You can, that guy smells like he used soap recently. You can smell that, stuff like that.
Yeah.
A Bigfoot, they can smell us, they can hear us a mile away, and they just simply stop moving or whatever. They're hard to see from what I've seen.
Well, I think in that latest video of yours where, you know, you're showing the tree stuff, I think you even mentioned something about how, you know, you hadn't seen this stuff before, but you had never looked until now.
Right.
And I think that's the situation with a lot of people. I mean, I never saw a Bigfoot track until I started looking for Bigfoot tracks, and I spent tons of my childhood and everything else out in the woods and looking at animal tracks and everything else. And I think that's how these things stay hidden so easily, is because people just don't even notice they're around.
And if they do notice, nobody wants to be ridiculed.
No.
Especially with social media, you know, because someone could ridicule you to tears or worse. There's so many people that have seen and just won't say anything. You said you're in Oklahoma. I spend a lot of time in the Ozarks in Missouri and Arkansas. And a buddy of mine owns Flat Nasty. It's an enormous off-road park right on the line before Arkansas. This guy's a 70-year-old professional dirt biker, race car driver. He's an adrenaline junkie. I didn't ask him. This was about, I'm going to say, this was 2019. I know it is because I saved the folder on my laptop. So it was 2019. I'm talking to the guy. He's an interesting dude. He's telling me the story about buying. He lived in California. He raced off-road stuff all his life. He was a champion, made a lot of money. He wanted to buy a piece of the Ozarks. And his criteria for buying the property sight unseen was, hey, realtor, if I walk from one edge of my new property to the other, is there a possibility I could die? Yes, I'll take it. And that's the kind of, and that's exactly, his wife said, yep, that's just what he did. He told me, and I'm not looking for Bigfoot in 2019 whatsoever at all. This came up because it's a topic down there. Everybody runs into him like raccoons, apparently. He said he had a guy up there fixing his central air conditioning at his house. And the guy took pictures and said, dude, I'm driving up to your house and this bear comes running out from behind your house. And then it starts running on two legs. And I got a picture right here. And he did. And this guy's like, I've never seen it. He said, but once, twice, 3 times a year, same time of the year, I think he said April, if memory serves, he showed me this trail. And he said, every year it smells like there's dead animals over here. He's like, to the point where I've gone looking, figuring, something got into it with a deer and there's a carcass and, it's people pay to come to his property,
Yeah.
It's not like an amusement park. It's just really gnarly off-roading. And once you're on there, it's all, you sign a liability waiver. It is what it is, but he doesn't want dead smelling animals. He said he's never found it, but he came down the trail one day on a side-by-side. He said the smell went right in front of me. Like he said, whatever it was just crossed right in front of me. And my buddy owns a shop down in the Ozarks in Missouri. And he took me kayaking down one of the rivers, and it was amazing. And him and his buddy are just talking about, that thing came by the other night, and it was just snapping off trees all over the place. And we're driving back to his place, and he's showing me these trees, and I don't get it. I'm like, so somebody's snapping off trees really high? Like, what is that supposed to mean? I didn't understand what he was saying at the time. But apparently your area is hot.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a off-road place not too far from me. Growing up, we had some lake property, and it was up by Grand Lake, and it's just at the foothills of the Ozarks, actually. And down below one of the dams there, they do a lot of rock climbing and stuff with rock crawlers and Jeeps and, off-road vehicles, not hand rock climbing.
Right.
Down there, they'll hang out there all night and everything. And for a while, I knew somebody who I believe it was their brother-in-law was a sheriff there or something. And at night, these off-road guys, something would come to the edge of the tree line and start screaming at them and throw like sticks and rocks at them and run them off.
Wow.
And they ended up calling the sheriff, and this sheriff was, just happened to be, like I said, related to this friend of mine who was a Bigfooter and, blah, blah, blah. But I've actually, years later, I ended up hearing that same thing from somebody else that knew about it, that didn't know anything about me knowing about it already and wasn't involved in Bigfoot or anything. So it's pretty crazy, for sure.
They talk about it like it's a bear going through the trash,
Yeah, no big deal. It just happens. It's worth talking about, but not that big of a deal.
If you go onto my channel, I don't know if you got a chance to listen to this. I was just going to say the thing that ran me and my ex and the dog off made noise by snapping or twisting trees off. I didn't know they did that at the time. I kept trying to tell people, it sounded like it was just taking both hands and crushing a cord of wood in its hands. Not a cord, but,
Yeah.
more than one stick. loud. It was very loud, and I knew what it wasn't. I just didn't know what it was. But I never had one scream at me. But that's not entirely accurate, because last year I was in the Redwood Forest, and I was on one of my subscribers' piece of private property. And he didn't tell me anything. I didn't ask anything. I don't care. I've never seen redwoods this close. I'm waking up in the morning 3 foot away from a redwood tree that's bigger than my truck. That's awesome for me.
Yeah.
As soon as I got there, I'm making a video of some sort. It's kind of my life. So it's what I do, whatever. And I get on video. It's on my channel. And I think I called it, Did I Just Record Bigfoot? I heard a howling that I've had every single solitary hunter of every caliber on every continent listen to, and none of them, it's not an animal. It's some sort of crazy, it sounds like a woman screaming. And then in the background, while you hear the woman screaming voice, there's another howl that most people don't hear. And I'm like, that's the one that worries me. The lady screaming, I kind of thought it was a mountain lion or a coyote or something, but it's not. I was going to say I never heard one scream, but I believe I did. I got about, I don't know, 8 or 10 Bigfoot videos on there. The one in St. Helens was a wash. I got a helicopter and everything, man. And you ain't going to see him out of a helicopter, right? It seemed like a good idea at the time.
I mean, maybe if you spot one of those 24-footers.
Dude, stepped across Route 80 West in one step.
That's crazy.
And I've never told, this is the first time I've ever said it out loud to anybody, but that's an absolute true story. That absolutely happened.
So what's up now, man? You said you're getting ready to go back out there. You're going to spend some time out looking for them.
Yeah. Yep. I've got some serious optics. I always set up game cameras, and a buddy of mine is always talking about Bigfoot, and he's got it on his property. He's got Bigfoot signs and all that stuff. But this year, FLIR kind of backed me up, so I've got some pretty serious hardcore equipment. I'm going to see if I can get these guys on video. Anything. But as long as I remember to turn the camera on, man, you know.
Always keep the camera rolling.
Yeah, I get it. Now, people are like, oh, we'd have no, you'd be surprised. You'd be amazed. I literally carry, probably, counting GoPros, I probably have 19 cameras in my truck, including drones, mirrorless cameras. The truck is recording front and rear at all times, audio and video. It's what I do. So, but that day, the pictures of the sky, I had no idea how to use a camera. Something creepy runs us out of camp. I don't know how to use a camera. I didn't even get a camp picture of the giant Bigfoot holding a car over its head in the middle of town that you can look at right on Google. I didn't even, you just don't think of it. It's weird. But I promise, I'm thinking of it now.
Yeah, now you're prepared. You got the equipment. So
hopefully.
Yeah, best of luck for sure. Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your encounters and your stories and everything, man.
No worries, man. If anybody wants to check out the channel, you mind if I give it one plug?
Oh, absolutely. I was getting ready to say, tell people where they can find you.
Jailbreak Overlander on YouTube and on Instagram. And if you recognize the voice, I was Richie from Boston for a long time, but they took me out. So,
yeah, man, I like the channel. Hit him up, subscribe, give him a follow. He's going to be doing Bigfoot stuff. It's a cool channel if you're into like off-road and, nature and all that sort of stuff, man. I enjoy it.
Cool. I'm glad you do. And if I get anything on film, I'll make sure you're the first to know.
And if you've had an encounter with something you can't explain, shoot me an email at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. Check out bigfootcrossroads.com, the website, for links to the social media, merchandise, and everything you need all in one place. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.